Good afternoon, everyone. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to our fifth Facebook Live series episode, Voices of Power, the Power from Within, our post-election recap. We are gathered here the Monday after Election Day, which was one of the most important elections in our history. And if you're anything like me, you can't believe that Election Day was less than a week away. There's so much that has happened in that time, and it felt like one of the longest weeks of my life. This election has really meant so much to so many people. There's so much to celebrate, and I'm sure a lot of y'all celebrated this weekend. We saw record turnout, the highest voter turnout in a century. We saw Black, Indigenous, Latinx, API people, and young people have a major impact and being a decisive voice in the outcome of this election. We saw hundreds of organizations work together to make sure that our voices were being heard. And at State Voices, we saw our network have a the record number of voter contacts. We have over 65 million voter contacts. We registered more than 2.3 million new voters. We ran one of the largest voter protection programs in our history. And on top of all this, we have the first woman, the first American Indian woman, the first Black woman to be elected to the Vice President of the United States. So I know folks have been out there shouting and really excited about the representation, and just a huge shout out to all the organizers, all the community members who came together to make sure that their voices were heard on Election Day. On the flip side, however, we also know that the work to eradicate white supremacy did not stop on November 3rd. The majority of white voters, men and women, voted to keep a leader whose agenda promoted and capitalized on white nationalism in the White House. We know that for Black and Brown communities, this moment is filled with a lot of contradictions. This isn't new to us, right? This is what it means to be Black in America. And we know that our celebrations will quickly turn to organizing, to holding elected officials accountable to us, and to continuing to fight for justice. So on today's show, we're going to be discussing some of these tensions, right? Some of these contradictions that are coming up for us. We're going to celebrate as well. And we're going to talk about some of the shifts and trends that we've witnessed during this election, and then how can we reflect on these matters in order to better govern as we go into 2020. So I'm really excited about my first guest today. Joining with me is Kelly Robinson, the Executive Director of Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Kelly, how are you doing? And if you could say hi to everyone, and I would be really excited to hear where were you on Saturday when you heard that Biden was declared president-elect, and did you do anything this weekend to celebrate?
Ooh, I celebrated my little booty off. I was so excited. And well, first of all, hey, y'all. Hey, Mom and my sister, if y'all are watching. I always have to take that opportunity when I'm on Facebook Live. And I just want to say, I think that you're right, Alexis. A lot of folks are sitting in a lot of tension. But one of the things I'm holding on to is that we can't allow the patriarchy to steal our joy. We can't allow Donald Trump to steal our joy. And it is important that at least when your heart starts to flutter because you're excited about a Kamala Harris, you're excited about seeing parts of our communities reflected in the White House, we should hang on to that because nobody can steal that from us. And that's part of the fuel that moves us forward. And for me, I'm based in DC, and when the news came in, I had decided to go for a jog. Now, no joke, I was planning to be out for a total of an hour, right? And this would have been the first hour that I was away from my computer since Monday of last week. It was the first time I had actually gone out the front door of my house. And of course, this is the moment when the race was called. But the amazing thing to me is before I got a text or anything telling me that the race was called, I actually started to see people flood out into the streets. Kids start banging on pans. Church bells start ringing.
Wow.
Cars start honking. I don't know where folks got fireworks, but they were going off. And it was just a beautiful thing because we knew, right? We knew that the voters had done this, right? We knew that the voters had decided to rise to that challenge. The voters had decided that this new world was not only possible, but it was probable because of the investment that we had made in each other. So it was just a beautiful thing. And I also celebrated by getting the best sleep I've gotten in the last 4 years. Let me tell you that.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Hi, Mom. I'm going to stop and say hi, Mom, too, because my mom's watching. She's like, why didn't you shout me out? And hi, Kelly's mom. And yes, like, don't let anyone steal your joy. I love that. And yeah, when I found out, I was like doing my hair. Like I was just a little bit bored and I was like, I need something to do. So I'm just going to like straighten my hair today, which I never ever do. And in the middle, I started getting all these text messages. And then all of a sudden, like my whole family started calling me and we were just like screaming and celebrating and honking horns. And then my sister and I went down to Black Lives Matter Plaza in DC, and just the joy. I mean, it was just like full of community, people dancing, people being emotional, like just, you just felt the energy. And I just saw so many bottles of champagne being opened and being sprayed around. And then I don't know if you saw this, they said that more bottles of champagne were bought in DC on Saturday than compared to the last 2 years, like combined.
Wow.
So people were out. Yeah. So people were out here getting it. They were getting
Those are
it.
our
And
people
so
right
I hope,
there.
yeah. So I hope everybody had a chance to celebrate and find some joy this weekend. So, I want to discuss the future of reproductive health access with you. I know this is the work that you are focused on. And we definitely saw some wins in 2020 for reproductive health in Colorado, for example. But we also saw some losses in Louisiana, for example, which around Amendment 1. So can you talk about, the reproductive justice landscape coming out of this election and what you are seeing as both the opportunities and challenges that are to come?
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for giving me the time to do this. Yeah, I have to say that the future is brighter for reproductive health and rights in this country, right? It's a lot brighter this week than it was last week. And there are some things that we know to be true, right? First off, we know that the majority of Americans, 77%, that's a record high, support abortion rights and abortion access in this country. That's important. The second thing that we know for sure is that there is no state where banning abortion access is popular. No state in the country where banning abortion access is popular. And I think that that's important because as we see ballot measures move forward, or even those terrible state restrictions that we saw earlier this year, what it comes down to is the fact that it's not a matter of where the public stands on this issue or what people want. It's really a matter of understanding that your access to abortion care fundamentally comes down to where you live and how much money you have, right? It's not about rights at all. It's actually about access overall. And I'm saying that because I think that it contextualizes then what we're seeing about the with the ballot initiatives that have come through in the states and how really it's disproportionately impacting folks who have less access overall, less access to health centers in their communities, less access to being able to travel across state lines to get what they need. And our reproductive justice partners have for far too long been saying what we all know to be true, that Roe v. Wade is the floor, not the ceiling for reproductive rights access, for abortion access in
Mm-hmm.
this country. So what we saw in Colorado, I think is really some positive news. Voters overwhelmingly defeated a harmful abortion ban, a measure that would have banned abortion access at 22 weeks. That's important, right? That's the beginning of work to protect and expand health and rights, and really sent a clear and decisive message. I think this was their fourth time defeating an abortion ban ballot measure of this kind, which is incredible. Now, we also did see that we had a loss in Louisiana, right? And I think that that's tough to hear, but it's also a state where through gerrymandering and voter suppression, it's even harder for people to have their voices be heard. So for us, the fundamental thing that we're fighting for is to ensure that folks have access to the full range of sexual and reproductive health care, no matter where you live and no matter how much money that you have. In order to do that, we're going to use every tool at our disposal. You're going to see some really important state fights taking place, state fights to expand access in states where we've got a new foothold on power. You're going to see us continue to do some defensive work, right? In states where we just know that the people that are elected don't reflect the values of all the communities that they serve. And then, of course, we're going to be leveraging federal powers, our newfound federal power, particularly with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, to try to get some more advancements at the federal level that, again, try to even out the landscape so that everyone can truly have access to care. But this isn't a fight that ended in 2020. It's not a fight that's going to end in 2 years. This is a generational battle that we are making progress on, strides on, because of the work of so many folks like the people listening here, and particularly our deep advocates in state. I have to shout out our reproductive justice partners, just organizations led by and advocating for women of color in these states. That has made this progress possible.
Wow, thank you so much. And I mean, just hearing you say that we have more hope this week, even compared to last week, this makes me feel so good. And I just want to, shout you out and thank you for all the work that you are doing, and holding all of us down. So just a huge debt of gratitude to you. And I know the work is going to keep going, and we got your back. So I want to talk a bit about, about women in this election. I mean, we saw women, specifically women of color, and specifically Black women, have a major impact, right, in this year's election, and seeing the shift in power. And at the congressional level, we know that the House will remain Democratic control. The Senate is still being decided with a runoff election in Georgia. So I'd love to get your take, in general, how are we able to use these shifts to better govern in 2021 around our vision and to really create and pass policy that is going to positively impact people's lives? And then also love to get any of your thoughts on Georgia and what's to come over the coming days and weeks.
Yes. Can we talk about Georgia? Can we start there, Alexis? Is that okay?
we can start wherever you want. Yep.
Yes. I just got to give claps for Black women. I got to give, some props to our communities that showed up and showed out, y'all. It's just such an amazing thing. And the thing that I take away from Georgia is that this didn't happen by accident, right? We got to give praise to Stacey Abrams. You got to give praise to John Lewis. You got to give praise to Keisha Lance Bottoms, to Monica Simpson from Sister Song, to Insay from New Georgia Project, to all those people that have made this victory possible through investing in generations of organizing in Georgia. That's what got us here today. And I think it's really important to underscore that a lot of times folks think about electoral politics as this thing that happens every 2 years or every 4 years. But what we're talking about in Georgia is the outcome of what happens when you invest in movements and when you invest
Yes.
deeply in communities. And that's what's yielding results right now. And to be fair, that is the only way that we should be doing this work. So I'm just so excited by what we saw. And I also think it's an indication of what can happen when we continue doing the same type of work in places like Texas, right? In places like Mississippi, in places like Alabama, and yes, in Florida too. So I'm excited by that. And I think it's just a testament to, your organization and so many other folks that are doing that deep work. And of course, moving forward, we know that it's going to be an uphill battle, but I think that you've got some folks on the ticket that really do. Well, it's not even about the folks on the ticket. You've got people in the community that know what's at stake and also are realizing their newfound power, right? That they actually have the ability to turn elections even, and of course, in Georgia. So that's exciting. And then for me, when I think about sexual and reproductive health and rights, we start with a values first framework, right? Because I think sometimes when you get a little bit of power, things get different, right? Like we're not all unified and fighting against Trump. It's almost harder to fight for something than against something. So I'm saying that because with Planned Parenthood Action Fund and our huge network of reproductive health rights and justice partners, we're working with about 90 different partners on kind of this proactive agenda. It starts with our values, right? Ensuring that we are reducing and eliminating health disparities is a core value that drives us. Ensuring that we are updating all of the policies related to our healthcare to meet this moment and technology and the times that we're in. And then making sure that we're seizing this moment of racial and social justice reckoning across the nation as a way to advance policy and just get to more equitable outcomes for us all. And I think it's important that we start there because then it makes the tactics kind of clear of what we do next. And like I said, in this big coalition, we've got several priorities. Top of mind is COVID-19 relief and recovery. Just every day hitting a new high in the people that are impacted by this pandemic. It ain't right? So we're excited to see that Joe Biden pulled together that task force. And we're really excited to make sure that gender equity and sexual and reproductive health and rights is included in this COVID relief and recovery. The second thing that we're advocating together for is around executive orders. We need to make sure that this Biden-Kamala administration on day one makes an unequivocal statement where the president stands on protecting and committing to expanding sexual and reproductive health care. And he can do that through a number of executive orders that will undo a lot of the harm that the Trump-Pence administration has done. And I'm talking about things like the global gag rule, undoing that. Ensuring that we're eliminating all these terrible regulations that restricted access to abortion care, all the terrible regulations that restricted access to health care, and making sure that he's putting pro-reproductive health people in his cabinet, right? And in important positions across the administration that will advocate for and with communities. And then finally, I think that there are two big things on our mind. One, making sure that we're ending the discriminatory Hyde Amendment, right? A 40-year-old discriminatory policy that really does prevent low-income folks from accessing abortion. And then also doing all that we can to fortify Title X, the nation's family planning program. We saw the Trump-Pence administration put a gag rule similar to the global gag, a domestic gag on the Title X program, which restricted folks who offer abortion care from being a part of that program. And look, this is a reality. Planned Parenthood health centers across the country are a fundamental healthcare provider in so many communities. We aren't going to lie to our patients or take away information from them. That policy needs to be undone, and folks need access to the full range of healthcare, including abortion access, and Title X needs to be there for family planning. So we're really excited about what's possible, and it's just going to be a new day. I'm telling you, a new day for healthcare access and for reducing stigma around healthcare in this country.
I love this feeling of like, this is a new day. And like, yes, there is some like defense we're going to continue to have to, we're going to continue, having to do, but there's also this new agenda that we can push forward in a very proactive way. Right. And Georgia, I just want to continue to praise the Black women. Tamika Atkins, who runs our table there, was pro-Georgia, Helen Butler, LaTasha Brown, the list goes on and on and on. And you are so right. I mean, I was just saying this the other day of like, look at Georgia as this example of this investment since 2014, right, into that state. And that every single cycle you were seeing progress, right? And so I'm just so excited about what, like you said, what's like it looks in Texas or even Ohio, right? Like we need to be like thinking about these multi-cycle year after year investment, not only for electoral outcomes, but to make sure that Black and brown folks are being invested in year after year. So just such a important lesson for all of us to learn, and just so much praise to all of the amazing organizers on the ground there. On social media last week, I saw Grace Freeman, shout out to Corinne in Florida, who said, I will never underestimate white supremacy again. And that has really stuck with me as we've been celebrating, but over the course of this week. And so, I think that's one thing that we unfortunately witnessed in this election is that we cannot underestimate white supremacy. So what does that mean for our work and the work that you're talking about in the coming weeks and next year? And how do we have to get ready, but also how do we have to stay ready?
Now that is a good question. For me, I've been thinking a lot about what it means not only to get Donald Trump out of the White House, but also to eradicate Trumpism, right? All of this kind of like hatred and vitriol that has come out of the closet and is now out here for us all to see. And I don't want us to be fooled in thinking that it started with Donald Trump or that he created it. No. This is something that's been insidious in American culture for a long time that just showed itself in a new way. In fact, I was listening to, I don't know, do you know Sonia Renee Taylor? She's a poet, author of The Body Is Not an Apology. And she was talking about racism in America. And she kind of likened it to making a cake, right? And she said, when you make a cake, you got eggs, you got butter, you got flour, you mix it all up in a pan and you bake it and you pull it out. And she was like, people talk about taking racism out of America as though you could take the eggs back out of that cake whole, right? But in fact, it's baked in. It's actually baked in. And I'm saying that not to say that we should give up on, eradicating racism from America. But I think that we have to really understand that it's not about a single person or a single individual. It's actually fundamentally reconstructing that cake and centering it around new bodies, new experiences, and new lives. In order to do that, we have taken a big first step, right? But now it requires that we do more. We've got to keep doing year-round organizing. We got to move straight into issue advocacy to hold these new folks who have gotten elected to office accountable to our communities. Then we got to train our folks so that they're ready to run for office too and know that that's something that they can decide to do if they want to. We've got to talk about building generational wealth with our communities if we're going to eradicate this. We've just got to build the infrastructure of our communities in such a deep way. And I think that folks are finally starting to understand that we can do it. And even more so, maybe one of the things that gives me hope as a Black person in America, I feel like my people have been fighting for hundreds of years to get this nation to live up to its promise, right, of truly being a representative democracy. And sometimes it's felt like we're the only ones that feel like it's a little bit broken. But now, and the thing, it is kind of hopeful for me that now a lot of people understand that fundamentally this is not a representative democracy, right? When you look to 2040, and we can see that 70% of Americans are going to live in 16 states, which means that the remaining 34 will have the majority of governing power in places like the Senate. That's not a representative democracy, right? When you're dealing with rampant voter suppression where people's voices can't be heard, that's not a representative democracy. And I'm saying that because now that folks understand the problem, not just Black folks, right, but a growing majority of Americans understand the problem, man, we can start to fix it together. We can start to bake a new kind of cake together. And that's what gives me a little bit of hope.
You just came up with our next Facebook Live series. It's like Reconstructing America, a new recipe or something. Like we're going to be baking a whole new cake in here together.
Yes, let's bake.
So my final question for you, Kelly, is, we go without, we don't want to go without saying that Planned Parenthood Federation and Action Fund has changed, right, over the last number of years. As y'all have increased the number of Black and Latinx leaders, from you to the president to core executive positions. So how would you say that shift in leadership has impacted your program?
Oh man, it matters, right? It matters to have leadership that represents the people you serve. 90% of the folks that go to Planned Parenthood health centers are under the age of 35. More than half represent folks of color. So for them and for our whole organization to see that we've got a Black woman at the helm is a powerful thing. To have me and my other colleagues like Jacqueline Ayers and Melanie Newman leading our political work, it is a powerful thing. And I'm just excited because I think that the leadership that we have right now really doesn't just reflect what it means to protect we've been around for 104 years. So I'll say the last 104 years of access to sexual and reproductive health. It really is a leadership that we need to envision what a future can look like that's bigger and bolder than anything we've been able to imagine before. And to me, having leadership of color unlocks that in a way. And I'm so excited to be able to support Alexis McGill-Johnson on this beautiful vision she's laying out for us.
That's awesome. And I just want to say, I give a huge thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I know I'm leaving just feeling even more uplifted and thinking about what is possible and what we can transform together. Also, Kelly and I are part of a cohort of new executive directors of color who are leading national organizations and infrastructure organizations across this country. And so we just want to say shout out to all of our EDs of color cohort and all of the amazing leaders of color across the country and who are leading organizations in cities and states across this country. So Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, just thank you so much and onward. Let's do this, y'all.
Let's do it. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Stephen Montoya, who is the Senior Director of State Capacity Building at State Voices, to uplift all the amazing work of the State Voices Network and our partners across the country.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alexis. Really appreciate that. I first want to start off just by also thanking Black women across the country for our celebrations that we had here in DC and the purchase of all that champagne, and join this chorus of folks who are really excited about baking this cake of democracy, and excited about offering up some of the ingredients that State Voices brought to this process. So you can see here the sheer number of total contacts, the over 47 million text messages, over 12 million pieces of mail, over 2.5 million calls, over 1 million, digital and canvases in order to conduct direct voter outreach. And I want to take a moment to just also really appreciate and shout out a couple of our teams at State Voices National, the data team, the policy team, and the civic engagement team, who were so central to this success. We had over 72 trainings of this past year across all of those departments. We trained over 4,500 people to go out and do this direct voter contact, to reach out to communities, to ensure that people had a plan to vote, to ensure that once they were able to cast ballots, that there wasn't anything that would keep that ballot from being officially counted. And we stood up our most ambitious census program ever. And that's a program that had its beginnings in summer of last year. We had this road show that took place in places like Dallas and Atlanta and Chicago, just to get a better sense from community what was most necessary to ensure that people could stand up and be counted. We ran the largest voter protection program that we've ever run in our history. We had 13 staff connected either nationally or the state level to that voter protection infrastructure that resulted in over 30,000 Our Vote Live calls, which is a new high. We through these Facebook series, through all of the communication that we pushed out, we kept asking people, create a plan to vote, have a plan to vote, reach out, and y'all responded to that call. We not only had those 30,000 Our Vote Live calls, but we also had 12,000 field interactions, helping to ensure that people got the resolution that they needed at polling locations real time. And we also were able to move more, or close to rather, $10 million to the ground to help support Latinx, Native, and BIPOC power building. Needless to say, this was an election like no other, and this is also an opportunity for State Voices to really grow and to show what it's capable of doing. And to carry that analogy forward, we're perfecting the recipe on this cake. And these are I'm just so grateful to be in community and solidarity with everyone who contributed to making this possible.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and huge shout out to all of organizations, all of the data staff, program staff, state directors, in tables across the country. And I'm joined by two amazing state directors who are running C3 tables in their states with us. Today, we have Zach Bergen, the executive director with the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table. We have Monse Arndando, the executive director of One Arizona. And so I know that you all got to hear Kelly Robinson join us from Planned Parenthood, and she just dropped jewels on us. And so we're going to keep this conversation going. And I want to kick it off actually to both of you, to welcome both of you to the show and kick off the first question. The same question I posed to Kelly is like, where were you at on Saturday when you heard the news, and did you do anything this weekend to celebrate? Monse, I'll kick it over to you first.
Well, first, I just want to say I love Kelly so much. I'm such a fan. I first met her at a training that I went to with NEA, and she was there, and I was just so inspired. So, just so great to hear her all the time, and she's such an inspiration to me. But for the announcement, I actually was running around. We had received a bunch of swag. So I was trying to get it out to partners, just get it out of my house, my driveway. I can't get my car in my driveway. We have so much voters decide, sweatshirts and t-shirts. So I was running around and folks were texting me like, congratulations, we did it. And I'm like, what's going on? And finally I was like, I need to go inside and turn on the TV. And honestly, I was in shock. Like, I couldn't really believe it. But also also knew it was coming, and it was a surreal feeling. Since election night, I feel like my body and my mind was just so still and ready for what was to come that I was struggling to let go and allow myself to just, accept it, celebrate it. And Alex Gomez, who works with Lucha, was actually on a panel with Georgia and a few other folks, and she said this is 10 years in the making for Arizona, and I started to tear up, and that's when I finally cracked. So that was my cracked moment this weekend.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of releasing, a lot of tears being shed, both happy and also just like it's over. Also, yes, shout out to Alex and Tomas. Thank y'all so much. Zach, what about you?
I wasn't quite sure what day it was. It felt like Tuesday was like a few days long. And I want to start by also sharing some love for Kelly. Kelly and I organized together at Planned Parenthood way back in 2009 when Iowa and Nebraska were part of the same affiliate. So go way back. But yeah, as far as for on Saturday, we had got some champagne. We didn't say what it was for, but we wanted to just in case have it. And as soon as the news broke, I got so excited, and I grabbed the champagne bottle with my wife, and I was going to just jump in the air out of excitement, thinking it'd be a really cool photo opportunity, not remembering that I actually have a ruptured disc in my back at the moment where I'm getting ready for surgery later on this week, actually on Friday. And so I jumped in the air to get this great photo opportunity, and what ended up happening is a photo of me screaming in pain and grabbing my back, which is now my most liked picture on Facebook. So more than any wedding picture or any kid picture that I've ever put on. So I'm happy to have that moment captured. So that's where I was. I ended up being in pain for just about a couple hours. But it was, yeah, it was all better after that though.
Well, I'm sorry that you had that pain, but you'll always remember the moment, right? Yes. And now you know the formula for like the most likes on social media. It's like we have a little pain. Well, thank y'all so much for everything both of y'all did. I want to be able to dig in a bit on getting your thoughts on the election and then kind of, being able to look forward from both of you. Zach, want to ask you, this election, we saw Nebraska doing tons of work. I mean, y'all did so much work. I think, probably ran one of your largest civic engagement programs ever. And did a lot of work to specifically engage BIPOC communities, however, in a predominantly white state. So you just talk about a bit about your program and then also what lessons did you learn from this election?
Yeah, happy to. So we've been around since about 2016, February 2016, and really part of the State Voices Network for just a couple of years. You'll have to forgive me. We have obviously our children at home, and so there may be some running in and out of the office. But before the launch of the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table, one of the biggest problems in Nebraska was power hoarding, right? And really locking in resources and strategy among just a few partisan, political, or progressive organizations. And one thing that we were able to show in 2020 was that previous model of upholding white supremacy in those progressive spaces was actually the main barrier to BIPOC organizing and actually being able to take off and succeed and see results, because there was this sort of chicken and an egg problem where these progressive, whether it was funding institutions or political organizations, they didn't want to or felt the need to invest any time and resources into BIPOC-led community groups and rural communities of color, because in their mind, there was no capacity there, right, to take on any large-scale voter turnout and voter registration. But however, those groups were unable to build up that capacity without those resources, right? So that's that chicken and an egg, and it had existed for decades in my state. And so to address that, thanks to the support of State Voices, we gave out large unrestricted grants to nearly 24 local nonprofits to support their organizing and civic engagement work. And we saw some absolutely incredible progress with those early investments. Even though we don't have all the data back yet, just some of the early indicators that we're going over point to these BIPOC-led community nonprofits as being nearly 3 times as effective at voter turnout and voter registration, using the same tactics and the same, same tactics, same messaging that the partisan campaigns and parties have always used. Their effectiveness is about 3 times as much. And so, this, this helped inform, how we as a table can use those re-grant dollars in conjunction with the one-on-one technical support with those groups to build up our member nonprofits who are running these programs for the very first time, but trusting that this early investment will pay off in the long run. And what we saw was Nebraska splitting its electoral votes yet again, which we got to be part of that national conversation. We're very excited to show that there is potential here in Nebraska for some real progressive wins. It just takes a shift in focus and investment.
Thanks so much, Zach, and lifting up, the fact that it takes that long-term investment year after year and on the front end. And then I just can't wait to see what impact that's going to have, right, in 2022, 2024, and for all of the work in between that y'all are doing locally. So Monse, the Associated Press has called Arizona for Biden. We know that, the Democrat for U.S. Senator Marque has been declared the winner. Can you talk about, there's just been so much excitement. I think, we were talking about Georgia earlier with Kelly, another state that folks have been just focusing on and have so much excitement around Arizona. Can you talk about your experience and what it took on the ground, right, to organize record turnout in Arizona and flip the state blue?
Yeah. And I want to remind everybody that we are in a pandemic and everybody shut down in March. So, we were so ready for 2020. We had been making plans, gearing up, investing in partners, like Zach mentioned, to grow into other counties, bringing on new partners. We now have 28 partners at One Arizona, and to have folks that are not just in Maricopa County, because we're so Maricopa County centric, but we're all over the state. So I'm really geared up for the moment. Started voter registration in January for the first time, and we're so excited that we had our shit together. I hope that's okay. And then we all had to go home and shut down and figure out what we were gonna do. And honestly, just got so creative on how we were reaching out to folks, invested in even younger people that knew how to use the internet and do those funny memes, those funny TikToks that got folks engaged. And then saw a huge uptick in Silicon Valley, these apps that you couldn't even look on Yelp for a restaurant without it asking, are you registered to vote? Do you know where to go? And we had a few folks at the door say oh, I'm waiting for Facebook to tell me where my polling location is. That was the line. But in Arizona, in 2020, even a surprise to us, we were able to register over 185,000 people to vote. And that for us also means getting them on the Pebble. So that's the permanent early voter list, which means folks get their ballot in the mail. That is something that people in Arizona are more used to. We've been doing it for a very long time. Sorry, that's my dog. He's usually snoring next to me, so he's awake today. And it took a lot of work. It took a lot of investment. It took dedication and commitment. 10 years ago at the Capitol when we were protesting SB 1070 and pushing to get the governor at that time out of office, we ran a huge voter registration campaign that ended up being 12,000 people that we registered. And then she ended up winning on election night. And I remember just crying, bawling, I can't believe she won. We worked so hard. What the hell? And it was a reminder of it was an awakening for me, at least, that our community, Latinos, folks were not getting reached out to, and we've been grinding ever since. And there was the biggest investments in 2020, and we showed that we could do good work with what we got, and by winning the state, as some would say, and just increasing the vote overall. I mean, more people voted in 2020 than any other year. So it's been incredible.
Yeah, no, and I think that both what you're lifting up, Monse, and also Zach, is that we saw this incredible turnout because of infrastructure in states and because of folks working in deep coordination and deep relationship with one another, right? That we were able to do this because we did it together. And that's what I love so much about tables and coalitions, but like about Save Voices models. Like we work in this model because we know none of us can do this work alone, that it takes all of us. And Monse, I don't know if we've spoken since my mom has moved to Arizona, so we should talk offline. But we're from Wisconsin originally. I live in Maryland now, or outside DC, but Arizona definitely has a special place in my heart now, with my mother making Arizona her home. And so she voted for the first time in Arizona this year. Yeah, shout out to all, we're giving a lot of shout out to moms today.
Yeah, we have all the moms out here. I've met a lot of folks whose moms have moved here. I'm gonna have to bring y'all's moms together for you and make a little Zoom party.
Yes. They can have like their own burger turnout, little groups together. That would be awesome. Yeah. So Monse, I have a follow-up question for you. I know we know that we saw huge turnout for the Latinx and also Native Indigenous communities that made a huge difference, right? But we keep hearing that the Latinx community turned out big for Trump. What are your thoughts about this narrative, and how do we push back against this false narrative?
Yeah, and I participated in a few Spanish language debates where they would do one side or the other side. And it's it's not an even split. I will say that. I think that the Latino community is super complicated and complex, just like every other community. And that we, time and time again, we have candidates that aren't speaking to the issues and things that folks care and are worried about. This year during the pandemic, so many people in the state of Arizona were still expected to go to work. Things didn't really shut down, and schools did though. So there was all these folks that were balancing work and kids at home and understanding how to support them, and then also just this issue about, is the economy good or not? I think that there's this idea, especially with Latino men, that it is, sure, and that had something to do with Trump's presidency versus their worth ethic and their ability to be in community and stand together. So I wanna push back against the idea that Latinos are one group and that they're not complicated, and in every state we see different groups, and that Arizona is not just Mexican, even though it's majority that, and that Florida isn't just Cuban, even though there's quite a bit of Cubans there. I learned this year through X that there's a huge population of Mexicans in Florida, and we're so trained to not know that or not believe that, and it's just not the case. So again, I think that folks are complicated, and something that we've been working on in the last decade is bringing the issues into the forefront, that these things are not separated, that healthcare and the election are connected, that the economy and the election are connected, and that education, we did that in 2016 with the minimum wage increase, and the candidates that spoke about that did really well, and the candidates that didn't do as well. More people voted for that ballot measure than either presidential candidate in the state of Arizona in 2016. And in 2020, we passed a tax on the wealthy for education. The top 1% are going to get taxed, and that money is going to education. And that passed overwhelmingly, and people skipped local elections and voted for that. So again, that, people are telling us that that's what they care about. That's what they want to hear. And we're still, not necessarily doing that. I was a little upset with the Biden campaign because they took a long time to come to the battleground state of Arizona, and it was just like, hey, what's going People need to see you, need to hear it directly from you. You know, we can't carry it all. Like as community groups, we're pushing, we're doing our best. We don't turn off after election day, just for a little bit, just for a few days, but we come right back. And we can't carry all the water, not with a Latina, as a Latina with all Latinos. Alexis, you as a Black woman with all Black people, like it's not fair, it's not right, and we have to be met too as community groups doing this work by these candidates and these campaigns.
Yes. So important that it's not on all our shoulders, right? We're not a monolith, and that we can't have this narrative around different groups being a scapegoat. Like it happens every single cycle, right? It's either the Latinx community, the Black community, young people, like whoever. And it's like, no, we're all responsible for pushing back against that, and also for not being pitted against one another. And so, thank you so much. I just think it's so important right now that people hear that and kind of understand, right, that those tensions that you were really bringing up. So I have a question for both of y'all. Dak, I'm going to go to you first. So, as we look to 2021, which I know feels like a long way away, but it's right around the corner, what are the top, 2 to 3 things that are top of mind for you as we leverage this moment and continue to fight for a healthy democracy, either in your state of Nebraska or across the country?
Yeah, great question. I'd say for us, there's a couple things I'll touch on. One, because we did split our electoral votes, and one of them, was able to be sent to President-elect Biden, we know for a fact that in this upcoming legislative session, there will be a strong push by the governor and his allies to eliminate that and move to a winner-take-all system. And that's bad for Nebraska. That reduces investment. That makes us, no longer part of the national conversation. And because of that, we know that again, there is not a whole lot of rest with our legislative session starting in January. We'll have to immediately kind of turn around to defend that and hold on to that split again, so we can continue to have those same investments and to have Nebraska and our communities and particularly our largest city, Omaha, as part of the largest, as part of the national conversation. But even outside of the major cities of Omaha and Lincoln, one thing that we're seeing with the voter turnout rates in our state is that the non-white populations in Nebraska are growing at much faster rates than their white counterparts. I mean, and in fact, 86 of our 93 counties, non-white populations are growing faster than white populations. And what that tells us is we need to continue that kind of long-term investment into rural community of color organizing. And so as an organization, one thing that we've already decided to do was as part of our organizer school program in 2021, we are going to pay the salary and benefits for 2 full-time organizers to be placed with 2 rural organizing nonprofits to build power in those rural BIPOC communities. And we're going to pay their salary and benefits for a year and handle the training, again, as another way of addressing that chicken and an egg problem, right? These groups, these organizations have every bit, have the strength to organize and the ability to mobilize across their community. They just don't have an organizer, and there's lack of investment. So we've already made that conscious shift. We know that we're going to invest at least 2 organizers into 2021 to help build that kind of long-term power there. And again, as a response to this growing non-white populations across Nebraska. And so, I guess I narrowed down to those 2. It's one in the cities. It's defending that electoral vote split to keep us part of the national conversation, but also shifting our organizing strategies to rural parts of Nebraska.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I didn't know that, like that demographic shift is happening in Nebraska. And also, like, I think you're lifting up like the investment in like organizing capacity and leadership development is so essential. It's something that I know that I have benefited from as coming up as an organizer. And then now an executive director is like having that investment in me, right? And then the impact that has in your community. So thank y'all so much. And the organizer school is like just a model for that we can all use across the country. So Monse, coming to you, like what's top of mind for you in 2021 for Arizona or across the country?
Yeah. So we had changes here locally. I think we're gonna see a map change with redistricting. And we are transitioning some of these county recorders, which we talk to or do a lot of work with when it comes to voter registration and election time. I think for us, it's going to be a big focus with what we can do here locally to support our community during this pandemic, whether that's talking to folks, doing one-to-one services through the 28 organizations or the legislature, probably both, right, to see what we can do for our folks. It starts in January. So many of our partners, we didn't really know what was happening in 2010 when we were at the state capitol. And you're like, wait, we went where to where? And then the governor got it. Like, how did that happen? And now many of our partners have their own lobbyists. You know, we're going down there, we're making demands, we're stopping stuff, and we're trying to push things. So something that is super important to us is to continue this ease into voting, the ability for folks to potentially register same day or be automatically eligible to vote, so that's not the biggest part of our program each year, you know. But for 2021, I do think that folks need to hear the good news, be a part of what is happening, join these organizations. More than ever, we've had folks that are just organically doing things on their own, tapping into new organizations. I can't say enough that though social media was limiting in many ways, it also opened the doors to other parts of the state that we haven't been to at all. And how do we like invest in that 1 to 2 years to continue to do what they were doing, either directly with the campaign or with us throughout the 2021 year. Our rural areas look a lot like the Midwest in Arizona, and those are folks that aren't getting talked to, aren't hearing anything but their little bubble, and you know, sometimes have issues just like our communities right in our backyard, you know. So a lot like Zach, how can we tap into those rural parts of the state and continue to branch out?
Thank you. And I just want to lift up, I mean, I think like for folks who are listening in today, they like to already know this, but right, our work to make sure we have a strong democracy, to make sure communities are being heard, to make sure that that civic engagement work is not just about an election, right? That Monse, Zach, and all of the organizers and leaders across the country who are doing this work are already thinking, right, about what's coming in the coming days and shifting into 2021, that this work is day in and day out, is year in and year out. And so let's continue to like capitalize off of people's excitement and how they want to be engaged, right? And to make sure that folks are being invested in year round. That our work did not stop and end on election day, that now it's about, you know, continuing to organize, hold electeds accountable, and make sure that our communities are fighting for what's best for them, right? So in our last few minutes together, I know that we are all tired as hell. This has been a year, not only with it being election year, but then Monse was lifting up, like adding on a pandemic and the racial justice uprisings and like folks, you know, working from home and taking care of like little ones. So what are you going to do to take care of yourselves, right? Between now and 2021, when all this work is going to be happening, you know, we are our most important value in our work, right? So we have to make sure we're all healthy, happy, and whole. So Monse, what's something you're going to do to make sure that you are taking care of you?
You know, I'm canceling meetings left and right. These things can wait a little longer until we need to come back together. You know, I'm feeling tired. I know the team's feeling a little tired. And not just tired from the work, but also from the emotional roller coaster that was the end of this election. And also, you know, even dealing with the fact of how things turned out, and that it wasn't like a big splash, you know, that there's still a lot of people in our country that voted with Trump or sided with that, and were very loud about how they felt in Arizona. And like a lot of other states, there was huge protests the day of and the next day that were pretty scary. So I think folks are both physically tired and emotionally exhausted. So, you know, we're all taking some time off. The weather finally cooled down in Arizona. On election day, it was 95 degrees. So we have been hot. We've been so hot here. So just the weather, being cool, being able to be outside. I'm organizing picnics with friends so that we're socially distant, but we're still hanging out. So a lot of chilling,
Yeah. You deserve it. You deserve it. Cancel all the meetings.
Yeah.
Zach, what about you? What are you going to do?
Well, like I said, I'm excited because I'm getting surgery, which is a weird thing to be excited about. But I've had a chronic pain issue for a couple of years now. And so hopefully that is going to get addressed on Friday. And because I really wanted to tempt the 2020 gods, I scheduled my surgery for Friday the 13th. You know, we're gonna see how it goes. But after that, I think I might hopefully treat myself to a new video game system, a PlayStation 5, and stay in bed for a few days, recover from surgery, and then watch the Mandalorian is a show my whole family is really into on Disney Plus. So myself, I have two older boys. They're both 11, and a younger boy that's 4, and my wife. We all love this show. So we're gonna watch The Mandalorian every time it comes out, and I'm sure some other, you know, Netflix show we'll get into and binge these next couple months before it really kicks off again in 2021.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you are taking care of yourself and getting surgery to address your chronic pain, and putting yourself first. And you deserve to not be in pain anymore. So we're gonna be thinking of you, sending all of the healing vibes. And you sound just like my husband. He's like, already the PS5. I'm like, yeah, we'll have to compare notes later. So, but huge shout out to Zach and to Monte and your teams and all the organizers in your state for everything that you've done. I just can't thank y'all enough. And thank y'all so much for taking time to join us today. So thank everybody out there for watching us today and for being a part of this historic year. We know that our work isn't over, but even though we know our work isn't over, now is the time to breathe. Everybody's been holding on to a lot of anxiety, have just been working so many hours. And so take a moment to appreciate those around you, to appreciate your community, to yourself, and give yourself some self-love. The work will be there, right? But we have to be taking care of ourselves. And so with that, we just want to say thank you for all that you're continuing to do to fight for a healthy democracy. We are going to have one more live stream in our series that we've had. So we have our 6th one taking place a week from today. Same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 16th. And so please join us as we bring our series to a close. And thank y'all so much for joining us every week. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and remember that our voices have power.